Beverly Council on Aging welcomes you to our program, Livin' the Good Life, designed to explore our beautiful city and the world around us.
Hello and welcome to Livin' the Good Life. I'm Bob Hobbs. We've got a very interesting show today on scuba diving, and my guest is Jack Budrow, a 7 or 8 year resident of Beverly.
Correct.
And scuba diver extraordinaire. How long have you been scuba diving?
I've been scuba diving for about 10 years now, and I started out here in this the North Shore area, and I've continued by diving on the Cape Ann. And I also take trips frequently during the winter months to the Caribbean, different islands in the Caribbean.
Nice. I always thought that scuba was a Japanese word for suicide by drowning. And what exactly what exactly is scuba?
Well, scuba is basically taking air that's stored in a tank, and they attach a respirator to it, basically. And you utilize that for breathing when you go under the water, and basically swim around and observe
do you have a mask over your face, or do you breathe through your mouth?
It's a respirator, which is a small device. It's about, you hold it the size of your hand, and you put it in your mouth, something like you would see with a snorkel, that type of mouthpiece. And it has a tube attached to it that runs into the tank, and that's how you get your air.
How long does it take to adjust to breathing through your mouth?
How long?
Yeah, well, until you get the nose full of salt water, I suppose. Yeah.
No, it's relatively easy and simple. It's you just take a normal breath. Actually, it takes a while to adjust and learn how to breathe rhythmically, and that way you can conserve your air, you can stay down longer, and it makes it very comfortable for diving.
How much time do you get on a tank, let's say? Do you ever use a tank up at a time? Or?
Well, ideally you shouldn't use up all the air in the tank.
Yeah, that would be best, I agree.
Tanks have approximately 3,000 psi pressure, pounds per square inch in the tank. And typically what you do is when you dive to about up to about 700 psi remaining in the tank, and then you surface. Only because you don't want to exhaust the total tank. Yeah,
that could make for a panicky climb.
Absolutely.
Now, how deep can you? How do you dive anyway? I mean,
well, you have to be certified, so you take classroom classes, and they teach you the basics of scuba diving, how to set up your gear, how to use it, what it's used for. Then you go in the water. They go in with a master scuba diver, and he'll train you how to swim, how to dive, how to descend, how to ascend in the water, and you do about 4 or 5 dives, and then that's the beginner level of scuba diving, and then you can go out on your own. Well, not on your own. You should go with someone else, and you can dive up to about 60 feet. You can dive into the water.
I was going to ask you what depth you can actually get to.
Then they have the more advanced course, which allows you to go deeper than that. Down to about 140 feet is usually the limitation. And then you have your tech divers, which go beyond that. I'm in the middle. I'm an advanced diver who can get down to approximately 140 feet. But on a dive, I rarely do that.
I was going to say, what would be down there that would require you to go to 140, unless you're diving shipwrecks? I don't know.
Well, I don't know if you're familiar with the Caribbean or not, but they have these things they call black holes. Or blue holes, rather. I'm sorry, not black ones.
Well, black ones
they're up in the air.
They're in the outer space, yeah.
They have blue holes, and they generally go quite deep, and usually 100 to 140 feet. So you can dive into those for one thing. A lot of times there are wrecks you might want to dive on, and they could be sitting in 140 or more feet.
I never even heard of a blue hole. What is a blue hole?
It's a section of the on the ocean close to shore. From what I understand, I've not been in one yet.
Oh, okay.
But it's basically it's almost like a large tube that goes down into the ocean bed, and it has an aura of blue within the.
This is just water. It's not
it's
it's not an actual tube or something. It's just,
no, yeah, it's an opening in the ocean bed, basically. I'm not sure if it was formed because of settling or something in the ocean bottom, but they do exist, and they are interesting for diving.
I'm going to say that'd be fascinating. I think I'd try to do that first, just to see how that works.
Well, okay.
And did he ever return? No, he never returned. MTA Charlie. Listen, you've got some great B-roll, some great film on your latest trip to Bonaire.
Yeah.
And there again, I always thought Bonaire was one of the moons of Jupiter. It's actually an island. It's the southernmost of the Caribbean islands. Is that right?
Well, not necessarily the most southern, but it is very close to it's in the southern Caribbean, just off the coast of Venezuela. It's about 55 miles north of Venezuela. And I think most people know of Aruba that aren't divers. And it's very close to Aruba. And it's one of 3 islands that they call the ABC Islands. You have Aruba, you have Bonaire, and then you have Curacao.
Curacao is a touristy place. Bonaire is mostly for scuba diving.
It's a very low-key, small island. It's about 25 miles long and 4 miles wide. The southern coast is basically the main area where the coral reef grows, and it's a very diverse environment, fish-wise and coral. And the southern shore is where most of the diving takes place.
Okay.
There's not a lot of beaches on the island, so it doesn't attract the regular tourists.
Well, let's watch some of the film that you took, and then we can see what this is all about.
There's a quick map of Bonaire, of the Caribbean. You can see Bonaire on the bottom of the screen. And like I said, that's very close to Venezuela. This video is I'm showing here is a scan of the southern area of Bonaire. I'm probably standing at an elevation of around 500 feet. I'm just scanning along.
That's their version of a mountain, I presume.
Yeah, not very high. The highest point in Bonaire is 700 feet, so that was close to the top.
You almost made it.
So that's just gives you an idea of what Bonaire looks like. It's relatively flat, especially in the southern shore. You don't see any high-rise hotels.
No, actually, it looks like a desert.
It's close to a desert, close to arid, just like Aruba. Aruba is an arid island. But they have their own water. They have a distillery on the island where they take the water from the seawater.
Oh, okay. They process the seawater. Yeah.
So they have good domestic water. That's a video of the shoreline on the south shore where the actual coral reefs are running along the south shore. And I'm on a boat right now, as you can see. We're heading out, and that's the boat, and that's our dive boat, and we have divers in the water.
Now, when you go off the boat, you just fall off? I've seen.
You just step off, off the rear of the boat. It's designed for diving, and those are just some damselfish that swim across the reef. And this is my favorite creature to video. It's a squid, and they tend to swim together of about 6 or 8 in a group, and they're very rhythmic, and they coordinate their movements, and they're not shy. They allow you to approach them very closely, and that way you can get in close and you can see their big eyes that's on the side of their head, and they move around by moving their fins on the side. You can see them waving. And they also can eject water from their internally so that they can jet off if they need to, if a predator comes after them.
I always thought a squid was an octopus.
Excuse me?
I thought a squid was an octopus.
No, that's coming up next.
Oh, okay.
The
good,
octopus will be coming up next. But yeah, the squid likes to is attracted to light, so they like to swim mostly up in the shallower areas of the ocean on the reef, and it's just exciting to see them. And they're not that plentiful, you know. It's somewhat rare to
the squid?
see them. Squid,
Really?
yeah. I did approximately 35 dives while I was down there this past 2 weeks in March, and of that time, maybe I saw them a half a dozen times.
Yeah. 35 dives
35.
In 2 weeks?
Yeah, we do 3 dives a day.
Wow.
So got a lot of time underwater.
I guess.
That's why I went. I wanted to get down there.
Great videos.
Yeah, and these are another group of squid, I think, that were swimming a little higher in the water. You can see it kind of in the blue area. One feature about Bonaire is that the visibility, you can generally see about 100 feet away. Whereas opposed to around here in Cape Ann and North Shore, you might see 20 feet.
You can see 100 inches.
when you're underwater. So
it's beautiful down here. The Caribbean around these islands is gorgeous.
Well, it's a totally different type of diving. Now you'll see is the octopus that you were talking about, which happened to be out of the reef in its hiding spots and was moving along the bottom when we came across him. Mm-hmm. And he swam into this tire that was down there. And as you can see, you can just barely see his eyes sticking up over the rim. He was watching me, I believe, as I was approaching him with my camera. And then I was able to get right over the top of him, and he decided that he had enough of that damselfish that was kind of poking at him, and he decided to move on a little bit. And as he moved, I kind of stayed with him. And you can see he changes colors as he goes over the sand. He takes on the color of the sand, and then when he comes to a stop, he stops next to this coral, and he transforms his body again into looking just like the coral that he's sitting next to, and he has the colors and the camouflage and the texture of the coral.
He's an underwater chameleon.
You're right, absolutely.
Oh, interesting.
So that's the real interesting parts I find of filming the octopus.
Is that 8 arms? Yeah.
That is. They have 8 arms. Unless someone has.
I've been looking for a girl like that, man.
Really?
Can't get anybody to generate any interest.
So now he's just he's had enough of the open, and he's going to move down into a protective spot in the coral. And this was just another octopus that I happened to come across, and he was just sitting on a piece of coral. And again, he's being tortured by a little small damselfish.
Is that damselfish got a death wish? Or
well, they're kind of territorial, so they don't want anybody in their territory. Oh. And he apparently was. So the next video is of I was diving on one dive that I came across. It's a large conch snail.
Oh, a conch, yeah.
And I happened
Jimmy
to
Buffett. Yeah, that kind of thing.
And I happened to see this shell because it was bright. It was upside down on the coral, laying on the coral. So I swam up to it, and sure enough, the snail inside the shell was upset that he was upside down. Yeah. So he was maneuvering to try and change his position. So if you just watch it, it slowly moves. Yeah. That's the foot that's moving right now. And what it'll do, we'll use that to flip the shell. And at the very bottom of the shell, you see these 2 protrusions. Those are actually his eyes. Oh.
And that's considered a delicacy in Key West. I can certainly see why they'd want to eat that.
That was one and only conch that I saw that the 2 weeks I was down there, and it's because of overfishing that they've done in past years. There's very few conch shells in Barbados. I mean, Bonaire.
Bonaire, really?
So now we're moving to the more predator type fish. That's a barracuda, and they're a silvery fish. It's quite long, but he just seems to move slowly over the reefs during the daytime, but he can move very quickly and fast. And I think most people recognize barracuda as having very sharp teeth.
Yes,
And I think you'll see in this video.
I've had some blind dates that fit the bill.
You'll see. I was able to get right up. He stopped swimming. He was just floating right now. He was just floating there, so he allowed me to come right up to him, and I zoomed in as much as I could to get a look at his sharp teeth. So
Are they big enough to do any damage to you?
Oh, I'm sure they could, but they don't. I mean, they're very. Yeah. As far as divers go, I've never understood or never heard of someone being attacked or bitten by a barracuda.
Well, that's because they never lived to tell the tale. That's
Maybe not. But that fish was probably 4 to 5 feet long. The next pictures I have are of another predator fish. It's called a tarpon. Mm-hmm. And they're a very popular game fish. I think you've probably heard of them from being from Tarpon Springs, Florida. And they were just swimming over the reef very slowly, not bothering anybody. And again, they allow you to approach them very closely without any problem. I
wonder why they're considered so difficult to catch if they're that friendly.
I don't know.
Ted Williams used to go fishing all the time.
These fish that I'm filming here were in 70 feet of water. And I don't know how they, if they're surface fishing when they fish down in Florida or not.
But I have no clue.
Yeah. I'm not that much of a fisherman either. But as you can see, they just slowly move along the reef. I think they do most of their feeding in the evenings, at night when it's dark. Mm-hmm. So this must be their rest time. Are you a fisherman by any chance?
Not a chance, no.
Not a fisherman, okay, good.
If somebody hands me one, I will cook it. But other than that, I don't want to get too involved.
Well, that's the other thing when you're down in Bonaire, that if you, well, I'll get into that later on, but you can bring fish into the restaurants and they'll cook it for you.
Get out. That's a nice touch.
But you're not allowed to actually spearfish down in Aruba. I keep saying Aruba, in Bonaire. Mm-hmm. It's a marine park, so they don't want anybody down there spearfishing.
Wait, can you catch them at all? They're all protected.
They're all protected pretty much. Yeah.
Good.
This is a puffer fish, which means that if it feels endangered, it'll inhale water and expand its body. And they have these spines on their body that will stick out when they puff up. And there are two types. One is a porcupine variety, and the other one is a balloon fish. Just they're different colors and they have big eyes, and very nice to
this is
enjoyable to
so
take.
They will look like they can't be swallowed. Is that the idea?
Yeah, that's a trumpet fish, surprisingly.
Oh, yeah.
And it was there's 3 different types of trumpet fish that I have on the video here. The one you see, they tend to swim with their heads down because they use that as camouflage next to the coral. You can see it looks like it's part of the coral.
Look at that. Yeah.
And this is the same fish, but they change colors. And this one is a bright yellow, amazingly.
No, I've seen that. Speaking of Florida, I was in another side bar, and they were showing fishing on. Who watches fishing? But they had it on, and they pulled up this bright green fish, and I said, and it turns out that I was eating
it's probably
it's a dolphin fish.
Yeah.
And then it turns gray as they go in, and then they prepare it for you when you dock. And I said, I'm eating this? Good God, I thought he was fishing in a nuclear waste dump.
A lot of fish change colors for protection. This is a green sea turtle, and they come to Bonaire to nest on your island. And you see them frequently on the island. This particular shot, I was just floating in the water, and he swam right over my head. I didn't even realize I could have reached up and touched him. He came so close. So they're very docile animals.
I'm going to say, would he have taken offense at that?
It was to her, though.
Good eyes.
Maybe we can get you fixed up there. But turtles are bottom feeders. They go down on the coral and eat the coral, the hard coral. That's their basic source of food. But they need to come to the surface every 20 or 30 minutes or so to take a breath of air.
Oh, like a whale, like mammals.
Exactly.
I see.
But
They're actually graceful in a lumbering kind of way.
Well, they can be fast, but they, like most of the fish that you've seen, they, unless they have to, they move along slowly. They don't waste their energy. This is an eel. It's a spiny-tailed eel, they call it. It has white dots. Very docile. Actually, I think you might see my hand come down. I was going to try and pick it up, which technically I shouldn't have done that, but it's just moving along the bottom of the coral beds and looking for a place to hide, I would imagine, or maybe for some food.
There's a lot of life down there. I would think. No wonder barracudas and everybody hang around.
That's the attraction of Bonaire.
It's a constant buffet.
Yeah. Some other eels that you see frequently in Bonaire is it's the golden-tailed moray. It's a little larger than this particular eel, and they hide in the coral during the day, and they come out at night for feeding. And the third eel that I have is the well-known green moray eel. You see his picture coming up, and he also does the same thing. That's the golden tail. It's gold color throughout its body, and you watch he'll open his mouth, open and close. He's basically taking water in to run over his gills so he can breathe, because if they're not moving, they need to have water passing over their gills.
Oh, interesting.
And they have, their eyesight is poor, but you can see two nostrils on his nose. They're very good. They have a very good sense of smell. So that's how they find their prey.
What do you smell underwater? I know.
It's amazing, huh?
Yeah, it is.
And that's the green moray eel that I was talking about. That was a very large eel.
They got a nasty reputation. Do they live up to that?
Actually, no, they don't. They're not. They're very mild, unless they're, someone comes up to them and tries to grab them or something that irritates them.
Yeah.
Other than that, they're not going to come out and attack you.
Good.
And
That's comforting.
Yeah, there you go. That's a stingray that you see swimming around.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And they tend to lay on the bottom of the ocean. They like a sandy spot where they can feed, and they also can hide under the sand from any predators or anything like that.
Oh, that's what they kind of.
Yeah, they burrow down.
Yeah, they kind of the sand covers. I've seen it. Yeah.
And this is an angelfish, a French angelfish. It's a gray with yellow body, and that's a queen angelfish, which is much more colorful. They tend to, they're plentiful on the reefs. They tend to swim in pairs. Now this is a Spanish lobster that you see here, and it's kind of unusual. And the typical Caribbean lobster is coming up now. They tend to hide under the overhang of the coral.
Oh, is that what they call a rock lobster?
Yes,
what do they call
that's a Caribbean.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about the rock lobster.
Okay, well.
Coming up now is some unusual fish. This is a scorpion fish. It lays on the bottom, and that's another version of the scorpion fish. Different color, bright red. They sit on the bottom of the ocean, and they just wait for their dinner to kind of swim up to them. And they have this small protrusion on their head that looks like a little lure or a worm that attracts the fish to them. And once the fish is within reach, they just quickly open out. It's within milliseconds that they'll absorb take in the fish.
They can take them in?
And this is a frogfish. This is a little different. It does the same thing for feeding. It has a protrusion on its head, but it just sits on the coral. And it's very difficult to see because they don't move. They just sit there. And they call it a frogfish because it tends to hop along the coral rather than swim.
You know, it can swim, I assume.
I haven't seen them.
Okay.
I think they probably could, but I haven't seen them. They just sit there. We missed the seahorse. I had a couple pictures of the seahorses, which is fine. Now these are parrotfish that are coming up, different colored parrotfish. They're frequent on the coral reefs. They tend to eat the coral themselves. They're very voracious eaters of the coral.
That can't be easy to do.
Well, they have special beaks that allow them to pick at the coral. So This is a filefish. It has white dots that fade in and out. Now, this is the last set of pictures that I have. And this is called, this is a notorious lionfish, which it is a invasive species in the Caribbean, probably within the last 10 or 15 years. And it tends to eat a lot of the juvenile fish. So it's something that they're trying to eliminate from the Caribbean. And you can see these spines that extend beyond the body. Those are very poisonous. That's their means of protection. And they just hover, float in the water below the reef, under the reef overhang, and wait for a fish to come by. So that was my.
You're going to say
that was my.
If you're a fish that swims by the coral reef, you're in a lot of trouble. Everybody's laying in wait for you.
There you go.
Well, that was fascinating. I'm sorry I missed the seahorses because I would have liked to handicap the race, and I'd have got the loser, guaranteed.
So they don't tend to run anywhere. They just tend to hang out.
Yeah, so the horses I bet on. But
are they alive or are they dead?
Yeah, who knows?
Well, that was my vacation.
Yeah, it's wonderful. How often do you go down, Jack?
Well, like I said, I try to go down, in the last 6 or 8 years, I go down 2 to 3 weeks every winter. And I've been to a number of different islands. I've been to the coast of Mexico. There's a large reef there that runs from Cancun down south into Belize and that area. Just off the coast of, that's the Yucatan area of Mexico.
Yeah.
And right off that coast, there's another island called Cozumel.
Yes.
Which is a very nice, I guess Jacques Cousteau labeled it as the best dive spot in the world.
And you've done that?
And I've done that a couple of times, yeah.
Well,
So
I think
I've been on a few islands.
I'm going to say you're Beverly's version of Jacques Cousteau, right here.
No, I wouldn't go that
This is
far.
good, fascinating stuff, really. Yeah, they did.
No.
When you go down there basically in the middle of the winter, January, February.
Yeah, I try to March.
Yeah,
Usually is when I get out.
how many islands are like that? There's no resorts on Borneo?
Oh, there's resorts, but they're really all geared towards the diver.
Yeah.
They have approximately 75,000 tourists per year, of which probably the majority are divers. So,
Well, that sounds like a great place to go when you got to get out of town for a while.
If you wanna-
which everybody in my family has to do once a year, by the way. Well, Jack, this has been fascinating. Thank you so
thank
much.
you.
The time goes by fast
It does.
when you're up here. I want to thank you very much. My guest has been Jack Budrow and his wonderful movies that he took when he was on his vacation, scuba diving. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on Living the Good Life. I'm Bob Hobbs.
You've been watching Livin' the Good Life. We always welcome your comments and suggestions for future programs. Call us at 978-921-6017.